In this example, we are going to integrate x times e to the x. And this is particularly well suited for us to apply integration by parts. Now, typically, whenever we see x times a function, integration by parts could be a good option. And here what I'm going to go ahead and do is just let u be equal to x, so that the dv is going to have to be the e to the x dx. So we need to differentiate to find du, so du would be dx. And notice that it very nicely becomes something simpler. And dv, recall, whatever we choose for it has to be something we can anti-differentiate. The antiderivative of e to the x is simply e to the x. So integration by parts tells us we take uv, so we have the integral of x e to the x is uv x e to the x minus the antiderivative of e to the x dx. And as claimed, this integration by parts does not solve the integral for us. It takes a difficult integral to start, and it expresses it in terms of a simpler, easier to evaluate integral. So we have the x e to the x coming down, and the antiderivative of e to the x is simply e to the x. Now, one very important observation to make here is that the choice of u and dv are not things that are typically interchangeable. The whole goal of integration by parts is when we get this resulting antiderivative is that it has become simpler than the original function. It's easier for us to somehow evaluate. So let's just kind of see what happens here if we pick a different choice. If I was to instead pick u to be e to the x and dv to be the leftover x dx, it's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. So let's see what happens. The du is going to become e to the x dx, and the v is going to be the antiderivative of x, 1/2 x squared. So now when we apply integration by parts, we have the antiderivative of x e to the x is equal to uv minus the integral of v du. So minus, I'll go ahead and even pull out the 1/2, x squared times e to the x dx. And notice what has happened here. This resulting integral, when we have applied integration by parts, has become more difficult to evaluate. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off what we have down here and just once again make that observation. We have to be very careful with the choices for u and dv. They are not typically things that are interchangeable.